feature presentation.
It's wonderful to know that people actually listen, and any feedback is great. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to Matt and I talk about your wonderful film. I wanted to start off by asking you, I'm sure you heard this in the review, you know, when you look at something that is considered such a high art form, there's a bit of intimidation in terms of like knowing certain aspects of it, and especially when it comes to the cultural importance of it. So I wanted to ask, just in terms of where you two kind of sort of started in a jumping off point with ballet, and did you have any prior knowledge or experience beforehand? Because, like, for example, my knowledge of it was, you know, from Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan or Herbert Ross's The Turning Point or The Red
Center
Shoes.
Stage.
Yes, Center Stage. Yes, early Zoe Saldana performance too.
Yeah. We didn't know that much at all, which I think is a good thing. We had done some dance short docs for a CBC show called In the Making, and Chelsea had made a really beautiful short. What is that called? Slip, an amazing dance short. So we loved the relationship between dance and cinema, and we definitely also felt like, because ballet had all of this kind of baggage in narrative cinema and like pop culture, it's always a really interesting doc subject, because you can like dispel whatever the cliches are and like go deeper, and there's a built-in kind of interest in the world of ballet. So all of that was appealing to us. But no, we felt like, I mean, I can speak for myself and just say I felt quite ambivalent about the world of ballet, and even a bit suspicious of it. But you know, you try to go in as open as you can.
I'd only seen Nutcracker.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be kind of like the classic one that a lot of people, that's their first foray into ballet.
For sure.
It's Nutcracker or Swan Lake.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of many others, but there is an aspect of that you just mentioned there, Sean, that it feels almost like a gated community, and either you're part of it or you're not. And I wanted to ask you, because you just mentioned In the Making of, can you talk about the importance of the collaboration process and how CBC's In the Making helped to put a focus on this particular film?
I mean, it was more that Chelsea and I met making that show and really loved working together. And when it ended right before the pandemic, we were looking for a project to do together. I think we'd also, you know, built a good rapport with the CBC, and they really loved that show, even though it was small and very few people watched it. So, you know, we got together in February 2020, right before the pandemic, and we're like, okay, like, we've done this episodic thing, like we've done this hosted thing. You know, Chelsea had obviously like worked in features and made amazing films, and it was like, what if we were to try to really kind of put our powers together and make something deep and immersive and verite driven and big in scale, and produce it ourselves and own it ourselves. And, you know, we like had no idea.
We were like, if we have all the power, imagine what we could do.
But, you know, we wanted a challenge, and we were both like in our early 30s, and we'd kind of done some stuff in the world and thought, okay, like now's the time to like try to take a big swing. And then the subject came, you know, so In the Making kind of set the table. And I think also, you know, I know that we made a doc about Crystal Pite, and Karen called Crystal Pite before she said yes, and CBC took our call, you know, like there were lots of reasons that show helped us, but kind of indirectly.
And does making something that is both a docu-series and a feature film change your perspective or approach to how you make something like this, even just in terms of the narrative structure and aspect ratios and just the editing and how you're putting it together? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that it is both, you know, a series and a narrative, and it plays really well as a standalone self-contained movie. And can you talk maybe a little bit about working with editor Brandon Mills?
Our boy genius.
Our baby.
Our baby boy genius. Yeah, I think like, I mean, definitely features and series are very different beasts, and we had sort of agreed, like we saw it as a series, we pitched it as a series, and that was something we were interested in making, and we wanted to do something that was like verite driven, that had a kind of organic arc, that like yeah, we wanted to make a kind of like big series that was also like, it was very deep but also like accessible. And so that's what we pitched, and then we realized that to like get the money to do it at the scale we wanted to, and for us that was like a non like negotiable, like we needed the money to do it the way we were envisioning, that we would also need to do a feature version. And then we kind of were like, well, that won't be too hard, we'll just like do a cut down. So like definitely like the series like sort of was kind of like first, and then when it came down to do the cut down, we started to try to cut it down and realized very quickly that it was like not gonna work the way we pictured, and we're like monsters, and we were like, no, but we must make a great film. So we essentially like started from scratch and re-edited the whole thing with Brendan.
Yeah. And Brendan, we should say, Brendan is the lead editor on the feature, but one of three. He's also our lead editor in their series, but he and John Gallagher and Sabrina Budeman are all editors on the series, and they worked on everything together.
Yeah, we actually did a hive system on the series. So the three editors worked across all episodes and passed scenes and back and forth. So everybody kind of touched everything. Yeah.
But it was like,
well, I was just going to ask quickly, was the production done at that point while you were in the hive sort of set with the TV series aspect or the docuseries?
We started editing like 3 weeks after opening night of Swan Lake. So, and we edited for a year. We finished the series like in April, and we finished the feature in August, like 3 weeks before TIFF. So we just didn't stop. We took 2 weeks off at Christmas because Jennifer Bechwell and Nick DePonsier like staged an intervention
and told us we had to stop working.
But otherwise we didn't stop. It was the most intense experience of our lives. We threw out the whole edit after 4 months and started again. Like it was really, really, really challenging. It's really challenging to like tell an ensemble story, to try to like hit that opening night accessible arc, but have the intimacy with the characters and track all of these storylines and bring them to a culmination. Like
500 hours of footage.
Yeah, 500 hours of footage, more data than your average Marvel movie. Like we just went nuts. And then, you know, it was like film school, but expensive because we got to take the same footage and like make it twice. And I think for me, especially, like I learned so much.
I learned so much. Like I'm a different person.
About what was one of the most important things that the two of you learned about basically remaking a film into a longer form narrative?
I mean, the biggest thing was that like they're completely different languages and they require different things, and they like one doesn't fit into the other. And like, you know, cinema requires more spaciousness, less you know, you need to be less didactic. And yeah, and TV, it's like, I mean, the bottom line is it's like you are wanting people to watch something over 4 episodes in a completely different context, not sit in one sitting, you know, not like knowing that they're going to get, you know, the story's going to come and they're going to be told everything over like the course of one sitting. They have to know that, like, you know, exciting things are coming. So just
and to try to do that artfully and like not make it feel like exposition, you know, like we actually, the irony of it all is we started editing the series like a feature.
Yes.
We're like, okay, we're going to make this like really like verite, like poetic series. And it was like, wow, this actually sucks.
This is a TV show. So boring. Yeah.
And then we started making the feature like a TV show. And we're like, wow, like we were so proud of the series. And we're like, oh, this sucks as a feature. So it's just amazing to learn like the things that, you know, cliffhangers and like character packages and montages that feel so satisfying in a televisual format feel so corny in a feature format, and things like letting the world wash over you slowly and like letting the characters deepen and build in the feature format feel like you want to bash your head up against the wall in a series.
Yeah, and I also think like even I thought is like, yeah, really good point, even like down to like aspect ratio, like in the series, we use like a different, for the archival, we use a different aspect ratio than in the film, because for some reason it just feels totally different. And it felt like, what was kind of like stylish in the series, and like the way we sort of played with aspect ratio.
We changed the graphics.
Yeah.
We changed the credits.
The title's different.
Everything.
Everything is different.
Yeah.
So it really is a completely different experience compared to the film and
Yes.
docu-series then, which is incredible. And Sean, I kind of wanted to ask you about this. As the founder of Visitor Media, how has the company grown in the last few years? And with Swan Song being both a feature and docu-series, does that open up future possibilities to expand upon productions that might be in one medium or one form, and then maybe you take it into another one, whether it be TV or short or feature film?
I mean, the company didn't exist 3 years ago, so it's grown a lot. It was a bit accidental. Like, I was building a slate during the pandemic in 2020, and you have to be able, like, law of averages says, like, have a bunch of stuff to pitch, because maybe one goes or two goes, and everything went at the same time. Like, we got like 3 green lights in 3 months, and I had no staff. It was all smoke and mirrors. So it was really building the plane as we were flying it. And luckily, we made this feature with Crystal Pite, Angels Atlas. And so we got to like learn a ton about working literally with the National Ballet, and like in the theaters we were going to work in. And as a producer, that was like hugely beneficial, because there's all these hidden union costs, and like there's just, it's so complex. Like, so many producers when we were starting this were like, you'll never get this done. Don't do this. Like 5 unions. Like, there's a reason. It seems like an obvious idea, this show, but there's like a reason it hasn't been done, because it's really hard. And then I made another digital series with Lito Pimienta, and then it was Swan Song, and each one was just like ratcheting up the tension and the pressure, and I definitely like got an ulcer. And like a lot of things have changed in my personal life. but I'm really proud. And Swan Song was always the biggest project, and it was always the one that we knew if it hit, it could be, not to like overstate it, but like transformative, in the sense that you can, if it's good and it's big, you can be trusted to make more big things that are good. And that's definitely like, if there's like a strategic goal with this project, that this is it. So it's been really amazing to see the reception so far, for sure.
Was there ever a moment where you felt balance or relief in terms of things were working, or you felt like this production was kind of moving along in a way that you felt like you were kind of collaborating with the performers, with the people involved as well?
Yeah, I mean, necessarily. That's like, the only way was to build those deep relationships and make them real.
Yeah, and like, that's something that like kind of ebbs and flows over the process, and ebbs and flows over the production process, even before, like when we were in development, like even before there's a camera, you're like building relationships, like and then in production, especially because you're like kind of pushing for them to be more vulnerable as things kind of unfold, and as things occur and happen, and you're asking them for access. And so that becomes like a different dynamic. And then in post, everyone's terrified of what you're doing. So keeping in communication with them, letting them know, just being upfront and being clear, and we had sort of final cut, but that didn't mean that there wasn't, like, for example, stuff with Shay around her mental health, and stuff with Yogita around her injury. We felt like it was important for them to see it before we locked those scenes. And then like at the end, we had screenings, and that was like, we tried to put as much thought into that as we could. So we had a separate screening with just Karen in like the theater. Then we had a screening with like our key subjects, the dancers, all together, and they were like really, really beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
And then Yogita, we had sort of an individual screening with her. She also just has a new baby, so we like went to her house and screened with her. And
very satisfying days.
Yeah, and those were like beautiful, but also like like we were terrified, like terrified, like be able to like be able to just like sit there. I would sometimes, like when I knew like an awkward moment that they like didn't know was coming, I'd like blur my eyes. And like I didn't want them to, like, I didn't want them to know I was feeling nervous that this thing was coming, but I was so uncomfortable in the moment because I knew it was coming, and then I'd be like, you know, feeling their reaction. Like I was sitting beside your Keith the whole time, and I was like, just blur your eyes, just blur your eyes.
Was there an example of that you can talk about, that you
There's
felt
this
that pressure, that anxiety?
Yeah, definitely. There's like the moment where like we knew that your Gita didn't know that Karen had said that, you know, she was like thinking about like her injury and replacing her with Genevieve. And so yeah, your Gita didn't know that that was coming. And so, and I was sitting beside her in her house, and it's just like, I also just like stuck my nail in my palm as hard as I could so I could feel pain, so I would feel less uncomfortable, and then blurred my eyes and then just sat there and waited for her.
But she laughed.
She laughed.
It's like almost like an out of body experience where it's just like you got to get out there as soon as possible.
So intense because the relationships are real.
Yeah,
You know?
care what they think.
And like you've asked for years of their trust and time and like their lives and their stories. And you know, Yogita's never told her story in this way before. Like Shay's never told her story in this way before. And so you feel this sense of responsibility. And of course, your first and foremost responsibility is to the film and to the work that you're making. But I think for both of us, like that can't come at the cost of like betrayal. And so, but you also don't know how your representation is going to hit somebody and what it's like to see yourself through somebody else's eyes. I mean, if anybody ever asked me to make a documentary for 3 years while I was working, I would be like, you've got to be fucking kidding me.
Get away from me, you psychopath.
You know, but it's such a vulnerability exchange. And so the fact that, I mean, honestly, they all loved it. And
that was so satisfying.
It was really beautiful. And after that, it was like, yeah, gala, tiff, all the rest of it. It's like decoration.
Yeah. I don't care. Yeah. Your Gita, when we finished, she turned to us and she was like,
you are legends.
You guys are legends.
Well, I think that's also really important to consider because, you know, you mentioned you spent a lot of time working on this. Do you think a silver lining of the pandemic was that collaboration process and earning that trust with the dancers, with the performers, with the people that are, you know, putting together this production compared to maybe even past productions that you've worked on with maybe more limited time and resources?
Hugely.
Yeah, it made such a big difference just to have this kind of liminal time and space with them to get to know them as people. And you know, and so I think the thing that we really learned is like when we were in that screening, and you know, like I think it's like I always screen with my subjects, and like I think it's your responsibility, like if you have to stand by your work, and you owe that to them. But I think that was like a testament to like, it was a reminder to me like, oh no, like this is the work, you've done the work to get them there, to know that what you're doing is like from like a place of love, and that you're not like out to get them in any way. What you're trying to achieve is something sort of like an artistic and that you want this to sort of be a piece of work that represents them, and represents what their world and what they do and how hard they work. So yeah, I think that gave us the time to get the intimacy, to get to the place where we had that kind of screening, and they understood, even though sometimes we were critical, that it was all coming from a place of like being real and like representing their world in a real way, which they don't feel is often done, you know, in the black swans of it all.
Right. A question that I wanted to ask, because you've talked a little bit about Shaylin Estrada, who is both captivating and candid, and in terms of, you know, her mental health and wellness, and also just in terms of her love for the art form. You know, she mentions that, you know, it's something that she loves so much, but she doesn't feel that sometimes it loves her back. It almost very much sounds like something that Charles Bukowski would say in that way. And did you remain neutral when, you know, she was going through a lot of stress and anxiety? And I know you talked a lot about cinema verite being non-obtrusive and sort of removed, but is there a part of you as a person and not just a filmmaker that wants to reach out and help somebody who might be in need?
I don't think either of us believes in neutrality as even something an ideal to reach for. I think it's much more about embracing your point of view and questioning it and critiquing it. But and I think also, I mean, I don't think either of us sees any kind of conflict between having a genuine relationship with a subject and them being in the film. I think they're actually like mutually dependent. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear, you know, you don't want to get into a codependent relationship with your subject where suddenly you're like responsible for their well-being in any way. But you know,
you need to have boundaries.
yeah, but if Shay called me and said like, hey, I need this, or Yurgita or Karen, you know, like not just Shay, but I would be like, yeah, what do you need? Like there's a genuine connection. I don't know about you.
She did ask you for Taylor Swift tickets.
She did ask me. She was like, you're the person I know who can get me to see Taylor Swift. And I tried.
See?
I
Sorry,
did try.
okay.
Yeah, I did try.
Secrets
I did not succeed though. So
Well, as soon as Shailene offers Cheez-Its to the crew, I found her completely endearing and just such a wonderful person to have some time to get to know through the film and everybody in the movie. And I have to wrap with you two, but I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And congratulations on both the film and docuseries Swan Song.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's, you know, we were really, really touched by your review just because it felt like you were literally inside our heads making choices throughout the process. Like everything you sort of like were speaking to were conversations John and I had endlessly. So it felt so satisfying. We're like, this is like what we want, how we want people to see the film. So it was really exciting for us.
Well, thank you for that. And again, like it's just one of those things where, you know, when you're looking from it from the point of view of a reviewer, you don't consider all the work and time and effort that goes into a movie. Even if it's something that you don't necessarily love, you have to appreciate what the filmmakers are trying to do. And that consideration and empathy, I think, that is seen in this film really is beautifully showcased, and it invites so many people in to experience a world that maybe not a lot of people are aware of. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks,
Take
Eric.
great care, Eric.